I've been out maybe 70, 80 times. I've had plenty of what I believe are deceptive interactions myself. I'm going to make big claims on what I'm saying is possible, and nobody can deny it after they listen to this. My main theory is that astral travel, all the astral realms people are going to, are controlled, entity facilitated, not your own power, simulations. It was based on their ability to create and place into a human consciousness, mind, or an Earth type situation so real and so overwhelming that I cannot tell reality from illusion.
If I'm in my own life here and I wanted to convince someone that I'm good and I'm nefarious behind the scenes, I sure as hell am not showing up in a ski mask, you know what I mean? Like, I might get them to like me.
Because I want to convince people and plant the seed of distrust in their own belief system, and to do that, I need to let them know I'm not speaking from a totally external, misunderstood place. I'm not at all doing that, and I need people to understand that. They said, we chose you years ago to write this book and to get all this information and map the astral so you could share it with people. Become an asset for disinformation is the other alternative. And then they said, we did the same thing for Robert Monroe. We chose him, and we made him write that book.
What would make you change your mind?
Static in the mind, but the signal's clear. Close both eyes and you disappear. Slide through the seams and reality screen. Wake up inside of an in-between. I'm not here to preach a story you can't feel.
Well, I do want to pre-program people a little bit here because, like I said, I'm going to come at people today with a Christian viewpoint on a radical extremist Christian viewpoint on astral travel, which I have done plenty of myself, by the way. I'm an ex-Gnostic, ex-New Ager of all that type of stuff. I want people to know that I'm doing this in a way that nobody's ever done, not trying to be a little special snowflake here and act like I'm the hot shit, but I have to tell people nobody's talking about what I'm talking about, so don't act like this is something that this is like a new thing. And every Christian I've exposed this idea to has not really fought back with me on it, but what do they know, right? I'm letting people know that I've read at least 25 or 30 channeled books and studied more sources. I've read at least 5 or 6 reincarnation evidence books, mostly Ian Stevenson, the most prolific in the field. I've read a lot of his best work. I've read like 12 astral travel books, 10 or 12 I've read, and we're dissecting astral travel lore today very deeply. Robert Monroe and Kurt Leland stuff. I do 80 pages in my book. I should mention my book. I wrote a book, Spirit Realm Shenanigans and Unhinged Rand, Exposing the Psychic Fabrications of Discarnate Dweebs and Nephilim Nitwits. It is embedded with a dumb guy comedy because I'm trying to convert all these New Agers and Gnostics out here, and I had to reel them in with some brain rot, you know? So yeah, it's fun book. It's inappropriate. It's not Christian comedy at all, by the way. So anyway,
Yeah, all good.
yeah, I'm letting people know I've read tons of what else, like regression material, remote viewing, possession stuff, past life memories, future life memories, if anybody wants to hear about that later. But anyway, I'm letting people know I'm coming from your side and I understand it, and I'm not coming from like an ignorant, I don't get it. I was raised Christian this way and super uptight, like not at all. And I did out of body work for 2 years, not a super long time. I've been out maybe 70, 80 times. I've had plenty of what I believe are deceptive interactions myself. And I've come out with a theory that is mostly based on research, but also from my own experiences. Okay. So I want to say I listened to a couple of your podcasts recently to prepare a little bit, and you have a lot of astral travelers on, and I'm going to offend a lot of people today. And I and I hope people know I'm coming from a good place and I'm trying to do what's right here. But I will offend people massively, and I apologize in advance. Please throw tomato emojis in the chat or something, or comment section. I mean, I'm cool with it. I've like made amends with it, but I don't want people to think I'm coming at this ignorantly, because I'm going to prove to everybody today really quickly that what I'm saying is possible. I'm going to make big claims on what I'm saying is possible, and nobody can deny it after they listen to this. But I'm only going to go into like 1% of the evidence I have, but some of the stronger stuff, sure. And I want to say I appreciate you, because this is the first New Ager podcast, or non-Christian at least, to invite me on. Everybody else is too scared, so I appreciate you being a real one. It means a lot. So anyway, my core theory, which I have a lot, but my core theory, which I think is a unified, all-encompassing theory for a lot of things, which we'll get into, is that self-declared guides, spirit guides, ascended masters, higher selves, etc., whatever you want to call them, all these different various characters in the astral, I would, yes, umbrella them under the label of demon, Christian-wise, and deceivers. Now, I will say quickly that we're not going to get into why I don't trust these entities and who their identity is today, because that's plenty of evidence in my book that I compile. Like, for example, my second chapter in my book, I do 12 different channeled sources, some of the most popular, and I cross-examine what they say about specific topics. Some of my sources are Raw Material, Seth Material, no relation, Urantia book, Cassiopean transcripts, A Course in Miracles, Dolores Cannon's work, Edgar Casey, Rudolf Steiner, etc. I have 12 different sources. I cross-examine what they say about Jesus, what they say about demons, what they say about Atlantis, what they say about human origins and creation, a few more things, and I show that they're saying thematically similar things, very thematically similar, and they're always against the Bible's lore, but they always try to rebrand biblical lore and specifically focus on Jesus, the character, Yahweh as the demiurge, etc. But in the details, in the specific details, they diverge in so many incompatible ways. I have at least 50 pages on this in my book, which are a summary of a small few things. There is so much divergences that they can't all be telling the truth, and they're all claiming access to the Akashic records for information, and that they have perfect memory. So if they all have perfect memory and access to the universal memory field, whatever, why are they all giving different stories? It's strategically deceptive to muddy the waters with all these various different belief systems, in my opinion. Now, my main theory, which I didn't even say yet, I'm sorry, I get off topic really quick. My main theory is that astral travel, all the astral realms people are going to, are controlled, entity facilitated, not your own power, simulations. And when I say simulations, I mean, like, you hear the stories, you hear how crazy these things are and how elaborate and how they are filled with these feelings and emotions and perceptions, intuition, gnosis, knowing. And I'm letting people know, I believe, and they kind of admit to this, that it's all simulation. And they admit to some of it being simulation, which we'll get into stories of that because a lot of people don't like to talk about that. But I think it all is, and they control your lucidity, your intuition, they can put thoughts in your head just like in the waking world, but more so when you give up your sovereignty in this divination act. I believe that they are basically doing this to create theatrical situations, immersive VR, consciousness VR, to download into you and to convince you of an experience, a false cosmology that doesn't exist at all, or maybe in partial truths does in areas, the reincarnation framework, etc., because they want you to experience it. It's the most convincing when you experience it, otherwise than just them telling you via channeling, which when I talked about the channeled lies, they match exactly what the spirits in the astral say. It's the same characters, in my opinion. Now, if what I'm saying is they do theatrics and put on a show and play all these characters, basically like a movie in the astral, and control it to such a godlike, I say godlike regretfully, degree, because we're going to get into excerpts that prove that they have this ability. And if this is true, they're doing theatrics to convince you of things that are false. And the only framework that makes sense of this is a biblical Christian framework. And this is technically defended in the Bible. Please let me know when we have like 15 minutes or so, because I want to do my Bible rant, which I usually save for like hour 3, but we're not going to do all of my material today, which is totally cool. But yeah, that's my overall theory. I think that this vision control power also feeds into many, not all, near-death experiences. I think it feeds into past life memories, absolutely. And I have a whole entire 3-hour framework and chapter on that whole thing. I explain birthmarks. If you think birthmarks are good evidence, I thought so too. There's an explanation for it. Talk about that later. Secret space program lore, I think, is all disinfo for a Gnostic bridge with fake implanted memories. There is admitted false memory implantation all throughout the lore, and that takes 9 hours to cover all of it, but there's plenty of examples of spirits admitting this happens, and that's more part 2 material another time.
No, 100%.
Am I making sense so far?
No, yeah. No, you're not going crazy. I guess let's backtrack, right? Because I'll frame this too. There's 0% chance, right? Like we could go through the entirety of the Bible and all of your theories in 1 hour. Like,
No, I
it's
know,
just
I
not
know.
possible.
I'm just giving an overview.
What I would want to know is what has Christianity done for you that I guess the other route didn't? Like, what has changed in your life, like since becoming a Christian versus the other route?
Well, observable and very clearly, in my opinion, the other route, when I was doing out-of-body stuff into all the New Age lore and everything, I was getting a lot more spiritual warfare, and that's because I was opened up for it. I've had little to none since my transition to Christianity. My transition was slow. It wasn't immediate because I didn't let go of a lot of, beliefs, and I tried to mix them together, very Gnostic-like, and say it's combined, and it's not. I think the Bible's divinely, perfect, except for single word translations, which our interpretations today are very, very poor on a lot of things, such as hell and a lot of other concepts that people
What do you mean by spiritual warfare, though? What does that mean?
Like I used to get pulled out of my body even when I didn't want to, when I was trying to go to sleep, and I could go back in pretty quick, and intuitively, even before I was a Christian, something in my head was screaming, call out to Jesus, and that was what also initiated a lot of my transition, and something told me in my head to do that, and immediately I did that, and boom, it went away, and that's happened multiple times now. And now I don't have any attacks like that. Also, just depression, anxiety, and all these things that come with what I believe are demonic influences. Yeah, you can have your own without their influence, but I had a lot more of it whenever I was doing drugs and whenever I was doing out of body work, etc. And I thought I was becoming myself, but really I was merging with demons and they were influencing me. So when people say, "Oh, I become myself by doing this," it could be in a Christian framework the exact opposite, because you might be merging with spirits that are influencing you the more you allow them to. The more you allow them to means the more you do divination and open them up. Now, I've also my life's just peaceful and happy and amazing, and I wrote this whole book in a relative quick time. I mean, it took 8 months of 60 hours a week and going crazy, but I've my life's just been filled with peace, and what I like. I don't have the same urges I used to. Like, I used to be kind of a slut, kind of a problematic character in the lust field, and that's all literally disappeared. Not 100%, but like 90% from where I was before. I used to need a woman to move on in my life and get it through the day, and now I've been celibate for a year. Not gonna maybe save myself for marriage. I'm gonna try, but I doubt it. But I've just been like not slave to my physical desires anymore, and I feel really open up. And I know people can go into the New Age and have that same experience, but I think demons attribute their influences and treatment different to different people, and I think they're assets that people are doing work for them and sharing their lore. I think they treat a lot better and harass less than other people. I think that's a strategic thing they do based on a lot of data. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, makes sense, man. It was scary, and this seems to have helped you in more ways than one, but it got rid of all the pain, the scariness, all that
Yeah,
good stuff.
way more than I've
Which,
said here, but the peace is a big thing because I never had peace my whole life until I became a Christian.
yeah, that makes sense. I guess how do you like when you hear about the other stories? Actually, let me pause you. Am I considered new age?
I only listened to maybe 3 or 4 hours of your stuff, and you had on a lot of, I wanted to listen to astral travel stuff so I could get my lore updated in my head, and you did play devil's advocate a bit, which I really appreciate, and you're having me on, which is enough of a good sign that you're not, dogmatically stuck in one box, I assume, but I don't you definitely align with what's considered new age based on what I've seen you have people on, but you never really state a strong opinion from what I've seen, and I respect that because you're being more like, interview type and more responsible there. But I'm not 100%, but it seems like you align with it.
What is considered new age?
I mean, it's a big old blanket. New Age is like the more positive spin of Gnosticism. It's like the same cosmology they believe in. It's reincarnation based. It's consciousness raising. It's I judge myself in the afterlife. I'm God. We're all God. So it's the ultimate lie that Satan the serpent, which no was not a literal snake, told in the garden to Adam and Eve, or to Eve specifically. It's that you can become God, and that's the same lie playing out on a cosmic scale today, and I think in a way that makes it sexy. And people need to understand true evil is deceptive, it's alluring, it does not come at you with obvious malice. It's crafty and subtle. Okay, this is what I'm trying to say here. This is what these entities are verifiably doing, some of them at least. At least some of these astral entities are verifiably tricking you for decades, because they are proven to be liars based on cross-examination of lore with other people, not just your own perceptions of people's different perceptions in the astral. No, like telling them stuff that does not correlate with others. So people need to know, if they are liars in the spirit realm convincing you of lies for decades, they are elaborate and they are doing it for a big payoff. And they want you to think, this is a big thing, they want you to think the main reason for the whole archonic deception, or the whole reason for lower astral entities or the dark side, is for loosh harvesting. They want you to believe that, and these simulations push them towards that belief system aggressively. They all get to see the truth behind the curtain, even though they're allowed to see it in a control simulation, in my opinion. And the whole point is because if you believe that their main goal for the main goal is for energy harvesting, which is a resource, which is more of a neutral reason to be doing evil, then you won't believe that they're trying to stop you from finding Christ and following a biblical path. And you'll think it's about one thing, which is a limited hangout half truth, as opposed to, no, they're trying to guide you into hell, which I don't think is what people think it is. It's not like eternal conscious torture, in my opinion, but it's still not good. And it's still real. So I think that's a demonic angle of what's going on here, but they have to allure you with this Hegelian dialectic where they have good cop and bad cop in the astral. They do, and they make you bat 1,000 every time you get in a battle, astral battle. You're always winning, even though it seems like you're losing for a second. They let you win, and it's all theatrics, and it's too good to be true. The dialogue is corny. I'm getting a little bit off topic of what you said, but I'm just, I'm making the point that I'm gonna get into the evidence in a second, but that's what is going on here on a bigger scale here, summarized in my head.
I'll say this, dude. I just think about, like, I keep it simple. If I'm in my own life here and I wanted to convince someone that I'm good and I'm nefarious behind the scenes, I sure as hell am not showing up in a ski mask. You know what I mean? Like, I might get them to like me. I might, be just overly nice for 6 months, however long it takes, right? And then I'm, I'm pulling the rug, if you will. Like, I think that makes a lot of sense. If you're gonna be an evil being, you don't
Yeah,
just come out the gates being scary. Like, you would come as a nice guy. Like, I
exactly.
mean,
But they
you'd get 'em
create
to trust you.
these characters like the shadow people, the happy sleep paralysis entities, and other characters to make you think that, okay, that's the bad side, and the other
Mm.
side is obviously good. And the Bible says Satan comes, and Satan is a all-encompassing word also for, like, evil entities, etc. But it says Satan comes as an angel of light. What do these beings identify as often? Light beings. It's on the nose, and there's multiple examples of this. They call themselves legions of light at times, which legions in the Bible means a bunch of demons culminated in one person. It's like they're rebranding biblical terms to make it seem like, no, the Bible got it wrong. No, we're actually this, and the Bible, that's the demiurge who wrote that, and he's except the Jesus part, and they try to disconnect the character Jesus from Yahweh, Old Testament God. And there's so much verifiable evidence in the Bible, not only, but also just structural evidence to the Bible that proves that there is no way they're separate. But anyway, I can't explain that today. I don't want to get off topic too much. If you don't mind, I want to get into the evidence because people are going to be throwing tomatoes at me virtually until I prove them somewhat wrong, hopefully.
Yeah, definitely. I think we can definitely get into the evidence. I wanna talk about a couple things, right? And I think
Go
there's a
for it.
few that I don't really like to attribute, like, what my audience thinks. Like, I don't know. I think it's very nuanced. Like, what you're saying, like, when I hear you talk, I hear about and you've said this in the beginning, it's your personal experience. Experience is very hard to argue with, right? And
Yeah,
interpretation of ancient biblical documents, like, you're not the first guy to do that. There's very, very smart people who from all different backgrounds, cultures, religions. I don't know, and you might have these kind of backgrounds, but people who study ancient languages, there's very few, right? Hebrew, and it's like very, very, very complex, and people have been debating these things for years, or thousands of years, I should say. Um, it's complex, man.
it is.
It's the most complex topic I think there is, and I've never seen anybody debate in a way that it's hard to debate, dude, because you're talking about experience, right? You're talking about, like,
A
personal
lot of what I'm talking about is
experience.
cross-examining data from the Gnostic spiritual context, from the entities themselves. I take examples and I show how if you cross-examine them on a mass scale, there's so many incompatibilities that it's hard to count them. And if there's even one incompatibility, if there's even one liar claiming to be who they're not in the astral realm, which all they have to, like, they can present themselves as whatever, they can shapeshift in the astral because it's all simulation, in my opinion, and they admit to shapeshifting often in the astral. And if they're not who they say they are, and often is provable in the channeled lore at least, it is who are they and what are they doing, and why are they allowing me to see these things?
And
So
I'll say this, man, I've interviewed a ton of people, and I think what you're bringing up is something that always fascinated me. I was like, I used to think that there would be consistency in these stories, and there's not. And I'm telling you right now, I've talked to just a more than your average person, and that is one of the things that's always kind of blown my mind. It's like, man, everybody has a different theory on what happens, and I kind of felt like that was the end of the line, right? Like, you get out of your body, you realize you're more than your body. You're not just this meat bag, and there would be answers, but it seems like depending on who you are and your belief systems, there's different answers, and that always fascinated me for sure.
There's a lot of
Let's talk
reasons
about.
for that.
Oh, I'm sure there is. I want to talk about again some things for me, and then we can dive in a little more on some of the proof you have. Here's something that I struggle with, and you said I don't mention my beliefs, but yeah, you haven't listened
I haven't
to
listened to
every
a
episode.
ton.
How could
It's
you?
yeah.
I don't know if my beliefs is like it's not a solid rock, that's for sure. Uh, I'm an honest seeker, I would say. Like I'm genuinely
I can tell,
trying
man.
to understand. And I would say this though, like I guess like faith is an interesting, that's not a concept, but like this the idea of faith,
It sounds like a
that's
slave mindset to people, but that's what I thought. But it's deeper than that.
yeah, I guess that to me it's superior to honest, authentic seeking. And I never understood that, right? Like let's say at the end of the day, I'm you're not inside my heart, right? But like genuinely seeking, talking to different people, trying to understand. Why is faith superior to that in that and the consequences are so steep, right? Like I could spend my entire life genuinely trying to be a good person in the way that I know how, right? Like being a father, being a husband, putting people before myself, empathy, caring, like really sincerely trying. And because I didn't choose that there's only one path to God, um, the consequences are very extreme, very
Yes.
extreme. And we're talking about eternal burning. And
Well,
I
I
think
don't believe
when I,
that, and the
well,
Bible doesn't
that's nice
teach
to
that, in
hear
my
because
opinion.
I will say this because people often, I find when it comes to Christianity, they will talk about, they're like pick and choose like the parts that they want to choose, specifically when it comes to their kids, right? Like they kind
Yeah,
of like naturally would be like, oh, like this idea of hell, some Christians will like justify it in their head as like, um, maybe like I would compare it to like jail here on earth, right? Or like if you're rich, dude, sometimes your jail's not the same as like the state prisons or something you would go to. Like you get a nicer version of it where you get to do yoga classes and shit. Like it's just a little bit different. And I find that a lot of Christians that I've spoken with will justify certain things, but to me, and when I've looked at it, and it's been a while, but it seemed pretty black and white to me. Like, no, you have to accept Jesus in your heart. Doesn't matter about your acts, right? Because bad people can do good things all the time. It's not about that. You have to genuinely believe, or you will go to hell. And when people describe hell, that's where I find like some Christians will make it seem like, it's not as bad. Like you kind of even just did that right there. You're like, well, I don't believe that. And so to me, it's one or the other. It's either like that part of it is true. And if it is true, like, man, we gotta start talking about the millions of people who don't get a chance to hear about God. And I guess my question to that would be, let's talk about it like an an Eskimo or like some Native American guy or someone who's way out there, right? Like they never get to hear about God. Happens all the time. I've always wondered, so do they get a pass? And if they get a pass, why would you even have to know about it then? Like I see a lot of Christian missionaries coming out saying, well, you need to know about God, but if they died without knowing about God, they get a pass. So why does that person need to walk around telling them about God?
it's a little bit complicated. I think if you are exposed to it, if you live in a culture with a phone, like 90, I don't want to say 90, but like most of the world does. The Bible says before the end times, the whole world will be able to hear the gospel, and that means generally, not literally every single soul, maybe, but it means the whole world will have access to the gospel, etc. Now, I don't think that
But
means literally
that's
every
what I
person.
mean. It's like you
I
can't
want to
you can't if it's this extreme of a thing, like it has to like it can't have like blurry edges on this
I
extreme of a
think
thing. Like
I
to
think
me.
God is totally aware of these discrepancies for the minority of situations and absolutely factors them in. And I don't think he will banish someone to whatever hell truly is, which I don't believe is what most people say. I don't think he will banish them because they didn't hear about him. Absolutely. I think if they lived a good life and they had a heart, and I think most cultures, these like smaller tribes that are like the uncontacted tribes, for example, or even people in like Islamic countries where they don't even allow
Yeah,
Christian
or
missionaries.
in China, right? Where
Well,
you're like in the rural nowhere. Like,
have a thing for it. Okay,
sure,
so
let's
there's
talk
these
about it.
books. There's multiple books on this. This is I have them right up here. There's Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus. There's Dreams and Visions. Is Jesus Awakening the Muslim World by dude, I forgot. There is Eternity in Their Hearts. That's three books I have right here. There's more. Those books detail tons and tons and tons of testimonies of uncontacted tribes, or specifically Islamic countries where they don't allow missionaries, people getting mass levels. I'm talking big amounts of personal visitations and dreams and visions of apparently Jesus. And I know they do fake Jesus sometimes, but these are, you judge it by its fruits. And there's tons of people in the Muslim world getting visions of Jesus, and then they will be told, hey, go to the market tomorrow and go here, and you will find a certain person, and they'll show them in the dream. And boom, they'll go there tomorrow, they'll see that exact person, and that person was told to do the same thing, and then they'll go and find an underground way to worship the Lord. And it says that there's a huge awakening of Christianity in the underground of these countries, apparently. And there's uncontacted tribes where they'll get a local prophet who will say something about, oh, there's going to be missionaries, or there's going to be people showing up here soon, and then they're going to bring the true word of God. And then boom, missionaries show up for the first time ever in the 1800s to this tribe, and they bring Bibles, and they were told, hey, we were told you were going to come last week, and this is like fulfillment of the prophecy. And there's like tons and tons of these stories, and I'm just summarizing because I don't want to get caught on it too long. But my point is, God is a missionary where people are not able to be, and this is verifiable in tons of lore. You just have to look for it. There's documentation of these things happening, and prophecies fulfilled. And I'm not saying, it's none of it's deceptive, but if it's creating true Christians out of it, I do believe that is fruits of the true God and Jesus, and that's, my Christian bias, whatever you want to say. But I believe he missionaries where he's not there, and I don't think you have to know his name. They have a name for Yahweh, for God, for Jesus, in these other countries that they don't have the full idea of the Gospels, but they have an inner knowing that they're born with, I think, and also spiritual interactions over their time, which has led them to be either polytheistic, or monotheistic. And I think if you're monotheistic as opposed to poly, which most, I think even uncontacted tribes, all these cultures have some form of that, I think that's the submitting to a God that's righteous, as opposed, and trusting in him, as opposed to just giving your loosh or whatever, or worship or attention, and blood rituals, whatever it may be, or lighter stuff, to any spirit that will interact with you. I think that's like the dichotomy there. And you don't have to know the name, you don't have to read the Bible, nobody has to. But it's I think God absolutely is smart enough to know, hey, this isn't fair to be like, oh, well, technically you didn't get it. But if you're exposed to the gospel, and you're exposed to the ideas, and you deny it, that's different. The Bible says it's better to know, it's better to not know Christ and go away from him or it's better to not know than to know Christ and deny him. That's what the Bible says. I'm paraphrasing poorly, but it does touch on this concept. You just have to read between the lines just a little bit. But I think there's plenty of stuff happening we can't see and verify, but there's plenty of verifications that there's something going on.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, look, when you take a stance on something, right, you often have to defend it. Whereas, like, I think that's where I'm a little different, in that I'm just seeking, right? And all I know is, like, in just like performance marketing, there's like a stat where someone has to see something like 18 times before they buy a sweater, right? Or whatever the hell they're putting in front of you. And I always think about, like, well, geez, we're talking about something so extreme. And so if you just hear about it
man.
once, or you got a vision of Jesus in your dream and you didn't go to that market, that guy, like, that's so extreme. Like, I'll spend forever trying to think about what home I'm going to buy, right? Like, and not only that, but like, you'll check out new homes and you look at different, like, I just think there's a ton of value in that too. And seeing other cultures, religions, and it's that alone gives me pause, right? And you kind of answered it, but again, you answered it in your way that's true to you, right? You're like, look, I'm not going to pretend like I understand the nuance of how God handles those things. But that is something, right? Like, there's something there that's, you could understand maybe why someone would be like, that doesn't fully make sense to me. And I think that's the biggest one. There's others. One other one I'll tell you that I struggle with, and it's very, I just had this lady walk up to me the other day at a park. I posted about it, where she was right away started talking to my kids. Like, I'm sitting there at a park having a good time with my toddlers, and she walks up, doesn't say hi to me, and says to my girls, who are 4 and not even 2, and she says, "Hi, sweet girls," or "Hi, beautiful girls. Like, I want you to know God is real and so is the devil." Now, in that moment, I was like, "Excuse me?" I was like, "She's 4. Like, what are we doing? Like, why you're not allowed to come up and just tell my daughter that the devil is real." It was a very strange interaction, and it did catch me off guard, but also, like, I just would never do that to someone, right? Like, I'm like, "Man, that's wild." But I'm grown enough to know that, like, one person doesn't, like, that's her, right? That's her doing that. That's not the Christianity as a whole or a representation of Jesus. So, in my head, I can get past that, but I will say that that fear, like, right away, she's, like, jumping into that, and, in that moment, though, what I was trying to tell you is, like, I have a hard time, like, and I don't think it's possible. But, like, when I'm talking to you about what I believe, it's not from a book that I can reference. There's not a line in a Bible or any of that. It's a combo of thousands, and I'm not just talking about my podcast, but thousands of conversations, thousands of experiences, thousands of hours really of me just like genuinely pondering these things. And so it's a big hodgepodge, right? That kind of gets me to my belief. And I just want to frame that because when I start talking about these things, um, my words won't do it justice. But when I say things like I can understand how technically there could be no bad and good. That triggers people instantly. They're like, "Whoa, whoa," and they go right into the extremes. Like pedophiles, dude. You don't think pedophiles is like you don't think that's bad? And I'm like, no,
Yeah.
dude. Of course I think it's bad. Of like, fuck those guys. Like, of course
Amen.
I feel that way. But I also can understand that when you go to extremes, it's not a good it doesn't meet anyone anywhere. Like most things that you gotta meet in the middle, and so I always go to simple things. So, if I'm in a war or the USA is in a war, like, this is a little more understandable, but, like, technically, they're the bad guys, we're the good guys. But on the flip side, that there's a guy with his family who's like, "Dude, I have nothing to do with this, like, they're the bad guys, I'm the good guy." Everybody like, it's relative, very hard to define good. And I think on a grander scale, I start to think about like, okay, so in order to know what nighttime is, you have to know what daytime is. Like that whole, like you've heard it a million times. It's true. There's truth to that. If you did not know, if we were just daytime all the time and someone's told you what nighttime was, you'd be like, bro, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Like, there's just daytime. So, in the same token, if there's just good, you wouldn't know what bad is. And if there's just bad, you wouldn't know what good is. And so, this idea that you basically need the other side to know, like, how to act well, right? Like, to know what compassion is and all these things, like, you need the opposite. You have to. There has to be that side of it, and I think to demonize the side that you technically need to know if you're at a high standard is a strange thing for me. Like, I have a hard time wrapping my head around that, like, I need to know what bad is to know what it feels like to be good and to love. I need to know all those things are true. That the polarity of it all is very interesting to me. So I don't understand how one side, the side you kind of need to even reference, like if you're doing well or not, they get the bad end of the stick. Like they have to go hurt when really they're doing you a service in a weird, fucked up way, right? In the extremes, it doesn't work. This all kind of like starts to fall apart because
I
we can't
understand.
make sense of it. But you need them. Without them, you wouldn't even have a reason to go around talking about Jesus.
Yeah.
Without them, there's just only good. So it doesn't make sense to me that one in a weird way, I think it's all needed. And that's when I say like
I
it's very
Christians
nuanced.
won't disagree with that in this you gotta understand, in this age, in this life that we're here for, which in a Christian viewpoint, this is a test. We get one life, and our choices on this earth, decide where we go for eternity, and that's a big thing for people. People are like, "Why don't I get a bunch of tries like reincarnation?" And I'm like, "Well, there's layers to explain why." First of all, it gets rid of your a lot of people's urgency for sure, and you're like, oh, well, I can figure out in the next 100 lives, so why even worry about it now? No, it's that's what it will breed on a mass scale, I promise you. But also, what were you saying? Christians won't disagree with you who are truly biblically understood here. Yes, it is needed. It is a symptom of free will in this universe. It is, but I don't think that is meant for eternity because then it will be the same cycles forever and ever. God says He's going to remove all that from our hearts, and you could say it strips you away of your free will if you can't go and go do a bunch of heroin or go drive like GTA. But I like to think for a lot of reasons biblically that that's not exactly the case. It's just we aren't going to have the same urges and also demonic influences that we have on this life right now. The millennial kingdom is said to be a 1,000-year reign of Jesus after the end times and Antichrist and all this stuff, which, I personally don't believe is too far off in the future at all. But what do I know? And in that reign, it says that Satan will be bound for 1,000 years, literally, and I believe that's literal, and I believe that demons will not be able to inflict influence on us. It'll be much easier to be a good person. It won't be heaven yet, it won't be perfect, but it'll be much easier to be ourselves, and we'll still be sinful without it. But my point is that evil that is you see is necessary. It is necessary. God says he uses evil all throughout the Bible to perform righteous punishment on people, on a collective usually, who deserves it. Not every person in that collective is probably deserving it, but you can't just get a meteor to strike exactly the bad people and leave the good people not suffering, because they'll also suffer from the fallout of their friends. So it's collective punishment, yes, which doesn't seem fair, but it's not permanent and it's not eternal. There's collective punishments that God will use, like Nebuchadnezzar, a bad king who eventually is iffy with God and pro-God and then not. But he uses like Nebuchadnezzar and also other groups that are non-followers of him to attack the Israelites, his own people, whenever they do too many collective sinning. And that sounds unfair to people, but you don't know what they were doing. It said that it was idolatry and ignoring certain laws that were set up, and a lot of sexual stuff in between, I'm sure. But my point is, we don't know how bad it was, because we see how today the collective sin of the most evil people is as dark and as prolific as it gets. So he uses bad to inflict punishment, which ends up renewing a remnant, which makes them even stronger and better and more aligned with the word. So it's you learn from your mistakes and you learn from punishment. It's like smart parenting to punish your children. It's smart parenting for God to punish his children when they're bad, because otherwise they will never learn. And if we never learn and we never have punishment for our mistakes, we will be pieces of shit forever and self-justify everything. So that's kind of what's going on a mass scale, according to Yahweh's style of things. And it says he brings evil on people, not because he's evil, but because he's ultimately in control of all things that happen, and he balances things in the most efficient way possible in a free will chaotic universe, in my opinion. And if you don't mind, I don't want to get too far off on that tangent,
go for it.
and I'd love to get into the evidence here for my theories, because otherwise I'll never stop
Get into it.
Yahweh. But yeah, we're getting to the vision control theory, and I'm gonna, in my book, Spirit Realm Shenanigans, I have 60 pages on Robert Monroe's trilogy. He's the top most prolific astral traveler. Most of your audience probably know. As far as like popularity and influence goes, he created the Monroe Institute, which is, Harry Potter's wizard school for the psychics, and I don't think it's a good place, and they have too many government affiliations with allegedly MK Ultra programs, but what do I know? It's just rumors from a lot of people. But anyway, a lot of sketchy stuff there, and in my opinion, and basically Monroe is, I'm going through his trilogy in my whole book, breaking down everything. And then in Kurt Leland, a Monroe Institute contributor, who's another big-time astral traveler who's much less popular, so people don't know his source as much, but his book is Otherware. And it's a lot more revealing in some of the pockets of things. And I'm going to start with the admitted simulations so that people can't call me a total liar up front. And then we'll go into some stories of...
Can I ask you something?
Go ahead.
Why are you so worried about what the audience thinks of you?
It's not that I worry, it's that I don't, people will accuse me of being ignorant and accuse me of being he's just brainwashed Christian. I need people to understand I'm coming from your side, and I understand your side. I fully...
Why?
Because I want to convince people and plant the seed of distrust in their own belief system, and to do that, I need to let them know I'm not speaking from a totally external, misunderstood place. I'm not at all doing that, and I need people to understand that. So it's not that I'm like anxious and like, oh, please like me. It's not like that at all. It's that I want to make an impact here, and the best way to do that is to be clear about what my mindset has been like and where it's gone and why.
You want people to know that you've actually astral projected. You're not, because you're right. A lot of people talk about this from a place of never having done it,
and they will impact people's opinions with that. Right. So I'm letting people know I have done it. And I can get into stories another time, but I have to get into testimony here because it's going to blow people's mind.
Yeah, do your thing.
So I'll say before I read this is the most flat admission there is, but there's plenty more. This is from Robert Monroe's second book, Far Journeys. It's in the middle of the book. He only talks about this subject one paragraph, and this is the whole paragraph. He only talks about it once in the entire of his 3 books and never mentions it again. And Kurt Leland in his book, which we'll go to next, discusses this in greater detail, and you'll see what I'm saying. But the fact that he never mentions this again, I think, is insightful, and I'm just going to read it. He says, quote, a favorite and quick learn forever method of theirs was simulation, talking about his guides, putting them in a simulation. His inspec, he calls it, which is an anagram for sea penis, by the way, but that's just a joke in my book. And he's saying that they want him to learn lessons and teach him stuff. So they put him in a simulation. So he says, a favorite and quick learn forever method of theirs was simulation. It was based on their ability to create and place into a human consciousness, mind, or an earth type situation so real and so overwhelming that I could not tell reality from illusion. I do not know the limits of such simulation talent or technology, nor do I know the extent to which they employ the technique. It may be only in my particular case, but I doubt it. The potentials of its application in other ways begs for broad speculation, which I'm doing. In my own pattern, it was usually applied as an instant cleanup of minor emotional patterns that blocked or distorted my clarity of perception or my stability. Usually, I was unaware of such dysfunction. They would note it and offer to take care of the problem. I would be informed that the lesson was about to take place with my consent, yet once in the simulation, it became absolutely and totally real, and I lived it. If I did not come up with the desired action, the simulation would be repeated until I did. Even in the repetition, I couldn't break through the reality of the simulation. His lucidity would be dimmed, which we'll get into in a bit. Yet once the training sequence was completed, I then knew what it was for. To pose questions about motive seemed irrelevant, or perhaps I didn't want to endanger the good thing I had going for me. So that is a flat admission of Monroe, the top astral traveler. They can and do place you into simulations, but they'll tell you. So everything else is real, apparently, but this is a simulation, and it's so real you cannot distinguish it from reality. It's so real, you lose your lucidity in it, and you think it's a real life you're living. That's what we'll get into more in a minute. So that is admitted to be a power that they have, and there's more examples of this, but people cannot say it's not possible. They can say they disagree with the deception going on, but they cannot say it's not possible, because if you can make it realer than reality, and the testimonies we're about to get into, you can see they can do literally anything in these realms, literally anything. And we'll get into examples. So I hope that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah. Makes sense.
So now what I'm getting into is Kurt Leland's Otherware. He talks about the simulation more directly and his experience, and it's very silly and crazy and cartoonish. And we'll get into implications in a minute. But this is the longest one, by the way. It'll take me a few minutes to get through, but it's important, and it's funny. So basically, Kurt Leland, his guides are saying, we're going to put you in a simulation. They're telling him this, and they say it's an escape room, an astral escape room. You have to figure out how to get out. And is that more literal or metaphorical? You'll find out. But he says he is basically transported to what he describes as like 1600s Italy in a castle, and that's how he describes it, and it's very real. And he says, I looked down at the drawing table where I found a complex perspective study of a cathedral drawn in ink on a piece of parchment. The sketch was in the style of the Renaissance. Could this be a past life, one in which I'd been an artist or architectural draftsman? So just for clarification, he was told he's going into a simulation, and then within moments of being inside of it, he forgets it's a simulation and thinks, is this a past life? But you don't have autonomy in a past life memory, which he has autonomy here, so that doesn't make any sense. But this is what I believe is mind manipulation happening to make him dumber on purpose, strategically, for reasons we'll get into in a minute. That's what I think is happening, and they can do that. So he remembers why he's there, and then he says, as instructed, I looked for clues. A quick scan showed me that there was no door. Perhaps it was concealed like a trapdoor. After all, I seem to be a prisoner of sorts. No door. So this is not a copy and paste of a real location. This is a fabricated simulation. Then he says, this is where it gets really silly. He says, I looked down at the drawing table again. The architectural rendering was gone. In its place, I found a piece of typing paper turned sideways. On it was a child's crown drawing of a landscape, a bright blue sky with a smiling sun and puffy white clouds, green grass, and a poorly drawn cow grazing by the metal gate. Before I had a chance to ask myself what such a drawing was doing in the Renaissance, however, I found myself inside of it. A real-life figure projected into a cartoon. A wind of colors flew by, the sun set, and the crescent moon lying on its side rose up. The moon had a big nose and was wearing a nightcap. A music box began to play Beautiful Dreamer, and the moon started to sing along in the voice of Frank Sinatra. A chorus line of five-pointed stars whirled and jigged between verses, occasionally chiming in. The brown cow never moved, however. It remained frozen mid-chew, grass dangling from its mouth, faintly pathetic. The sun and the moon seemed to be attached to a revolving wheel that kept spinning faster and faster. Day alternated with night so rapidly that they blurred together, flickering like a strobe light, and then just as suddenly as I'd been whisked into the child's drawing, I was outside again, seated at the drawing table. The architectural rendering had reappeared. Okay, so pause. This is the level of control that is admitted to be a simulation. Now, it's all goofy and silly and cartoonish now, but they can make it realistic, like a past life memory, and they can make it like this, okay? So they can do both and instantly transfer you from one to the next without flaw, okay? And he forgets that it's a simulation even while in this. So then he basically forgets why he's there again after being transported back to the castle. And then he says, and he's trying to, he like forgets and remembers over and over. Okay. So then he says, the study vanished and I found myself wandering through the desert with a clarity of logic that startled me. Mind manipulation here. I resolved to seek out the witches and warlocks who must have been responsible for this bizarre change of scenery. Even though he knows it's his guys, he was told, he forgets it's them and thinks it's some wizards, which it, in a sense was. He says, perhaps they could tell me how to escape this reality in which I've been imprisoned. I walked and I walked. The desert remained featureless as it had been when I first arrived. I was lost, but that didn't stop me. I kept on walking anyway. Suddenly, my perspective shifted. I seemed to be seeing myself from far away, looking down on myself as I walked. The desert planet I was walking on was so small that it spun beneath my feet with every step. I was wholly responsible for its rotation. I panicked. I began to feel that I would be trapped in this barren reality, wherever and whatever it was, forever. Without transition, I found myself back in the architect's study. So there's consistency here. It's not some random dream, and you're about to see why. So he truly forgets why he's there again, and eventually a concealed door opens up from where there was no door, and a woman walks in who's basically his guide coming in human form inside of the simulation, okay? So they have full control. And he, for a moment, says he believed for a moment he was reliving a past life as the Count of Monte Cristo, which is a character from a book and might be of fiction, but it might be nonfiction. I don't know. But he believes he's that guy, and this is the jailer's daughter coming to rescue him, and she loves him. That's what he believes for a moment. This is mind manipulation to make him look retarded. That's what's happening. Now, it's actually just the instructor that put him there, and she says he's not doing a good job, basically. She says, let me ask you something, the instructor said. Where on earth are you able to walk through a crayon drawing where the sun smiles at you and the moon and stars are singing? Your study contains bits and pieces from every historic period in the last 500 years. We threw in everything but the kitchen sink to get you to realize this was a dream, and we finally had to put that in too. All you had to do was realize the utter impossibility of everything you were perceiving and tell yourself you must be dreaming. Okay, this is important for multiple reasons. One, in his book, at other times, they tell him the most important thing you can do on Earth, the number one thing his guides told him to do, is astral travel. Practice roaming the astral realm. Why? Because when you die, you're going to need to know how to get around, because it's going to be confusing and crazy and chaotic. And if you don't want to get stuck in the reincarnation loop, you got to get practiced, okay? So they tell him that's the number one thing, not moral progression. They don't even mention that once from what I remember. They say astral travel's number one. And they said, we chose you. They said, we chose you years ago to write this book and to get all this information and map the astral so you could share it with people. Become an asset for disinformation is the other alternative. And then they said, we did the same thing for Robert Monroe. We chose him and we made him write that book. And also that became very popular. And also it influenced a lot of people to go out of body. And if it's not good and it's actually divination and it's bad, you just created an asset who created tons of astral travelers. Now, another reason this is important is because this guy forgot his lucidity was dimmed. He was in the regular astral, he seems to be fine and not have to worry about like forgetting where he's at and getting dumber, right? But in the simulation realm is when his lucidity was messed with. Now, if they can control the simulation, then they're controlling his lucidity, obviously, because there's no reason for that to happen. What I think is going on here is they're strategically choosing to dim your lucidity, which they've done at other times too, but they strategically do it in the fake realms that are admittedly fake, so that when you go to the real astral, the other places, the heaven realms, the healing centers, etc., that way you believe the other stuff's real because, oh, I can be cognizant and I know who I am. But they're clearly manipulating his thoughts in here because he's saying with a clarity of logic that startled me, like he doesn't know where it came from, but this specific thought and drive to do something came to me, and I don't know why. And he has partial autonomy, but not full autonomy at all. And they strategically limit your autonomy at times and also give you full memories where you have zero autonomy, and then they'll give you some partial and then more autonomy in other situations, which they prove to be doing when in the excerpt. So I hope that rant made sense. That's like just the beginning here, honestly.
No, dude, I appreciate it, man. It's interesting. I see when I look at you and I hear you talk, I see a lot of passion.
Yeah.
I respect that, man. I like people who are passionate. Where does it come from? Like, and what is your end goal? Like at the end of this life, all is said and done, what would make you happy?
Well, I'm trying to make an imprint as far as getting as many people as I can away from the deception doctrine that comes, what I believe are from demons, and which, by the way, is guiding people to the truth. And if you love truth, then you will hopefully gravitate towards it. And it'll. I'm not trying to be like, oh, I'm saving souls, but essentially Christians are commissioned in the Bible to preach the word and to help people not be deceived and help people. And that's what I'm trying to do. I've lived a selfish life for most of my years and I'm young, whatever. But I'm trying to have a good imprint on this earth before I leave. And also God blessed me, Solomonian style, very much so, archetypally, with wisdom and knowledge at a young age, which I have no explanation for my own doing. This is God choosing me for this. And he's given me what I believe is a big untapped secret to the demonic agenda and tons of evidence for it. And it's a concept that people have kind of drifted on towards before in the past, but no one's ever had a cohesive, unified, all encompassing explanation in a book. And I thought this book existed before I wrote it. So I waited 6 months to write it. So now that I know that I'm not trying to be I'm special, but I believe, he wants me to do this work, and there's tons of synchronicities and tons of direct reasons I believe that to be the case, but it's going well. Like, my success so far has been insane. The reception's been amazing. I'm getting on big shows soon. And I've been on 20 plus podcasts in the last 2 months. If anybody wants to see my full 3-hour sessions, because that's usually what I do, I have 3 parts of material, about to have a 4th, where I cover evidence for this in different ways, and I do a reincarnation debunk in part 3. But you need the first 2 to have a bedrock. Go to my YouTube page, Sethlehem_please. Sorry, I have to plug myself. And I have a playlist with all my interviews, and they're all, I have a lot of material. So, and buy the book. But anyway, yeah, I just want to help people, and I'm not trying to make money. That's not what selling the book's about, but it's just what I've been told to do by God. So I'm trying to. You don't argue with that man. You know what I'm saying?
What would make you change your mind?
I mean, listen, I came to this based on a ton of research and wanting to ignore it, but I just kept reading books until I found too many discrepancies. So changing my mind from Christian after going through all this, I'm someone who's already shit on things in my own book, like a few small specific things, not the overall encompassing theory. Like, I'm not dogmatic about anything just because I wrote it down and don't want to admit I was wrong. I have no problem with that. I've had to admit I was wrong a million times to get where I'm at today. So I have no problem with that. And I know you and some other people don't, but a lot of people are going to have a hard time admitting when they're wrong. I think that there's a great deception coming, as the Bible says, that's going to be convincingly very pro-New Age, pro-Gnosticism in the near future, based on the fake alien stuff, which I think they're real and abducting people, but I think they're, demons in meat suits or just Nephilim in general, biblically speaking. I don't think they're from alien planets, and there's a lot of reasons for that. Now, so I believe that time is short, and we need to get certain things out, and I think, changing my mind would require not a personal experience, that's for sure, because I think personal experiences with deceptive entities who control simulations and past life memories, I think that's going to be what guides people further into the Great Deception, because people will get mass downloads of these context-given scenarios where they're going to remember their past lives in Atlantis, and they're going to remember all these things about who they are when they agree and consent via maybe getting the mark of the beast or doing something that opens you up. So everything that's happening in the world right now is fulfilling biblical prophecy in a way that only those who seek for that answer in the Bible will understand. So it would take a lot. It would not take a personal experience, because experiences can be deceptive, and most of them are, in my personal opinion. I don't want to be dogmatic here, but I'm kind of all in on Jesus. I can't turn my back on that now. There's too much evidence that I've seen. To deny that at this point would be not dogmatically, but because I've just seen too much, I know too much. I don't know if it would be possible, but people hear that and they go, "Oh, look, he's stuck in a box," and I'm like, "Well, dude, it took a lot to get here in this fucking box." So, I'm doing what I can. So I don't know if I could change my mind. It's hard to say about small things, maybe.
Yeah, it's a complex topic, very complex topic.
Absolutely.
No, I appreciate the passion, though. Like I said, I appreciate that you even wanted to come on and share this stuff. I will say this, and you can take it with a grain of salt for what it's worth. If the goal is to convince people of truth, your version of truth, I think when you do things like this and you put up your fingers and you talk about things,
Yeah.
I think it makes it
I'm an
look
asshole,
like
too.
you're. Yeah, it sends a message that you're talking down to people. And if the goal, like if it was me and I was like, okay, I really want to convince people, I think you got to meet them where they're at, right? Like, for someone like you who seems to have been through like a lot of maybe hard times, you've done the astral travel, and this is the conclusion you came to. Um, I think you might get a lot more people if you kind of meet up at, I guess, yeah, where
You're
they're
not
at.
wrong at all, and I'm absolutely aware of how much of an abrasive douchebag I can be. Absolutely, and that's one of the things I'm working on and I'm convicted about. But when I get in the flow state, man, it's hard for me to hold back. You know what I mean? If you read my book, guys, I made it really goofy and like extreme, like I'm talking South Park style. I wouldn't say South Park, like South Park, Always Sunny in Philadelphia type humor, like dumb guy, abrasive, mean, ironic, sarcastic humor. That's how I am, and that's how I've always been. And it's not for everybody. And when talking about these serious things, I understand how it comes off. And I'm sorry, but I'm really doing my best here to not be evil about it. But I am condescending and a bastard. Absolutely. Thank you for reminding me. I fully agree with you, by the way.
No. And also, I'm also the believer, right? Like, there's a lid for every jar. So at the same time, like, there's going to be people that you might be able to reach that someone who is the other way would not be able to. So in that way, right? Maybe you're uniquely you for a reason. So
You know,
who
God chose a
knows?
really goofy guy for this mission, and I can't say I'm gonna hate on him for it. But how much? Just checking. How much long do you want to go? Because I got through very little, and I don't mind. I'm not going to invite myself back. You, that's up to you. But if you want to ever go through the vast majority of material I have not gotten through later, let me know. But I can keep going or do whatever you need.
Yeah. Well, I want to end with a question. And for you, right? You did to kind of say what you need to say on this bit, but I do have to go here fairly soon. It's nothing to do with you, by the way. I think these conversations are fascinating. Like, man, I don't I love talking about this stuff genuinely. Like, I hope you don't feel like I'm also like I see you, and I'm the same with you as I am with everyone else. I want to know why you believe what you believe, and if I can get little tidbits out of it, like that's amazing. That's I do this podcast selfishly to like ask questions and see if I can learn more, but. Uh, what do you think is the most misunderstood? If you had to put one thing to it, which is very hard to do,
Okay.
about Jesus that people are getting wrong right now, or I guess maybe that's one question. I'm also curious on like, other than choose me, and I'm saying that in a very simple way, what else is Jesus pushing that you feel like more people should be aware of? Other than I am the way, the truth, and the light, whatever he says. What else is in his message that you feel like needs to be pushed more?
Well, there's a million things, of course, but I think the one that people get hung up on the most, or one of them at least, is the whole idea of judgment from another entity. Because when you get into the astral lore, they all say, "No, I judge myself in the afterlife." That's who judges you, and it's the ultimate inversion potentially, if my deception model is correct. When people don't like the idea of judgment, they don't like the idea of I don't want to say the word responsibility or owning up to stuff. That's not necessarily that. It's a little deeper, but people don't like the idea that they're under somebody else's rules and they think they know what's right, and they think that their idea of what a sin is different than what God's is, and they think that they're right and that the God who created the universe, which they might not believe in him that same way, but they believe that they know more than an infinite, all-knowing being who, understands what it's like if we collectively go down a certain path theologically, philosophically. So I think that if people can understand why judgment makes sense on a cosmic eternal scale, then and people I think becoming a father, and I'm not a father and you are, I think like people becoming a father and understanding how to parent their children and understanding that punishment is good for them in the right way contextually, of course. I think we have to look at God as our father, which he literally claims to be and is, essentially, if that's who he is. And that he's has to treat us a certain way because we're dumb, stupid idiots, ultimately, compared to him. And that's just fair. I mean, he created the universe potentially, so, he kind of knows better. And a lot of people get hung up on social politics of today, which is largely has, become the way it has because of a lot of programming from intelligence agencies, admittedly so. And, this whole idea of becoming myself and being who I really am, the LGBTQ stuff, whatever, is ironic, because if we live under the cosmology of a biblical cosmology, then the more you sin in God's standard, the more you open yourself up to merging with entities that influence you. And the more you do that, the less you are becoming yourself, and the more you're merging with the hive mind, which, yes, I believe demons are part of a hive mind Borg, and that's how they accomplish these deceptions. I'm trying to stay on topic, but I think the idea of judgment is misunderstood by people, and they think it's harsh, and they think also hell is eternal conscious torture, which I do not. The Bible does not support that necessarily. That's a whole complex conversation, of course, I don't need to get into. But it's just those misunderstandings steer people away. And if they truly understood and sought through the Bible, they would see that it's much more merciful and justified, and there's a righteousness to it. And people don't understand this big scale collective punishments and righteousness and things that God did. They think it's very evil, the things he did in the Old Testament, and they can disconnect him from Jesus, which is impossible to do in so many ways. For one, Jesus' name literally translates to Yahweh's salvation, so that's one of a million points to make. But it's just, I just think a lot of things about the Christian life is misunderstood. I misunderstood so much, and that's why I hated Christians for a long time. Hated them. So just before anybody calls me a brainwashed Christian, I brainwashed myself here, and it took a long time of reading non-Christian lore. I'm getting off topic, I suppose, but there's plenty to say there.
Do you have any gay friends?
Yeah, absolutely. I've actually 7 at my work, and I'm trying to get them all to read my book and convert to Christianity. I've got 2 on the nose, and then I have a couple more. Yeah, it's not about like, I love people where they're at, despite my goofy douchebag behavior on this podcast. But it doesn't mean I'm going to say that the Bible's wrong about what a sin is and why that is. The gay thing is the hardest for people to get through and understand. They're like, why does God hate that? I don't understand. It's all love. And I'm not going to tell people exactly what I think right now, because I'm already going to get enough tomato emojis in the chat.
Go for it. What are you talking about? This is why you're here.
Oh God. Okay. If I'm going to be very controversial here, but in a Christian framework, which people do not talk about this, they do not explain why being gay is what it is, and they have, I'm going to just tell you what I think, and people can hate on me if they want. But in a biblical framework, what is going on here is that people say, oh, I'm born gay, why would God make me gay and then make it a sin? First of all, I don't believe that. You don't even get sexual urges typically till you're hitting puberty, right? And some people get it maybe before, but a lot of them, I'm sorry, statistically we know were rape victims, and that's not good. And I'm not saying that opens you up spiritually in ways rape alone, and getting interacting with it messes up your mind, and it makes you open up because of the dark places it takes you. So I don't think it's all rape based, but I'm saying I think it's something that develops. The more you sin, the more you look at it. If you watch a lot of porn, like for me, for example, I used to watch a lot of porn and bang a lot of chicks, and I wasn't gay, but I ended up creeping into more problematic porn, which is on the cusp of what's gay, and I'm just admitting that because I don't care, and I haven't in many years. But my point is, the more I looked at it, the more I opened myself up, the more I desired it, and those desires vanish when I start living a good Christian life. Like, I'm saying the desires that you have, just because you have a desire to do anything doesn't mean it's good. Just because you might desire to punch someone in the face doesn't mean you should. And people go, no, but it's love, it's not violence. And I'm like, this, not only is it, not only is it like nature-wise problematic, because people are like, oh, you can't make a baby, so it's wrong. And I'm like, no, that's not necessarily the point I'm making. But my point is, the more you sin, the more you open yourself up to demonic influence, literally, according to a Christian framework. And you think you're becoming yourself, but you're actually merging with what they want you to be and becoming part of their hive mind and the way they theologically invert everything in the Bible. Bad is good. Like the Bible says in the end times, evil will be seen as good and good will be seen as evil. And that's a very blanket statement, but I believe this stuff forms the more you sin. And there's people, if you want to say I'm lying, multiple testimonies I've watched, hour-long testimonies where these ex-homosexuals and you see the funny videos of the black guy going, oh, Jesus saved me and he prayed the gay way and I'm gone. And everybody laughs at that because it's hilarious, yes. But there are people who have done long fasting or parasite cleanses or exorcisms, deliverance, etc. And they used to be gay homosexuals who were lifelong addicts having gay sex with over 1,000 people, hundreds of people, these people claim. And their urges were insane, overpowering their whole life. And guess what? They do these spiritual deliverances or these parasite cleanses, etc. And multiple people have claimed it's gone. The urges are gone. They have a wife, they have kids. Why is that connected? beats me. But there might be a correlation there, and in a Christian framework, there is an answer for that. And I've never talked about this on a podcast because it's so controversial. But that is technically a logical way to understand that in a Christian framework. So I don't believe people are born gay. I think it happens over time, and it develops the more you allow it to, and that's because of your own heart. Yes. So it's not that you don't enjoy it, but it's a sin, and it's not part of your core built-in framework at all, in my opinion. Kill me now.
I would say, man, I have a lot of I have a lot of friends, maybe not a lot, but I mean, I've known a lot of people over the years. It's one of those things that I've been like, man, that definitely doesn't make sense. Um, I just put it like this, like food and shelter and sex are probably like our strongest drives, particularly food and sex, right? Of like being a human. They're so strong, right?
I only
Like you
eat
said it-
food so I can have more sex.
and you mentioned this earlier, right? You have this desire with women. Um, and it
I'm
seemed to be
defeating that
problematic
desire,
in your
but it's
life.
slow.
Hmm. I guess it's like so hard for me to wrap my head around, man. Like, I definitely disagree that you grow. I think without being gay, right? Like, it's your perspective, right? And I think people listening can intelligently like understand that. But if you are gay, man, you're either from a Christian perspective, you just got the shittiest roll of a dice because
Oh, well,
nothing is harder than like picture you with women, right? The way you think about them, you see a girl in short shorts, like you name it, right? I'm not going to paint a picture for you over there, get you all excited, but very hard, very hard, and like such a shame, man, that they're supposed to live their life a different way when it's like not their fault at all that they have that. Just like it's not your fault that you talk the way you do and you are who you are, and it's just it's a bummer, man. Like from a Christian perspective, I'll tell you that's definitely a turnoff for me. I would ask you, what is your version of that? Where do you struggle, right? And people don't like to talk about that because it's probably hidden and very secretive, right? But whatever that is for you, I don't know. It's just a bummer that people feel that way, I think. Because there's some
I understand. I understand how it looks from an outside perspective who's not on the Christian viewpoint. I totally get it. I was on that same side. I understand how it seems arrogant and ignorant of me to say the things that I did, but there's a lot of, I'm going to use the word evidence to back it up. It's just convoluted, and it takes a nuanced explanation of these things. I just gave you the quick 1,000-foot overview of my gay bashing, and I love the gays, and I have many friends who are, but that's not the point I'm making here. But like I said, I don't believe it's something that you truly struggle with if you live a life and you love Christ and you submit to Him. I don't think those urges will afflict you if you pray for them to go away, especially. And people go, why would you pray for it to go? No, it's not. I don't think it's from you. I think it's external. And then it becomes part of you as you allow it to. And yes, I think it's a mixture of your own sin versus influences, but I don't think it's built into your system, no. Personally. And I've seen evidence for that, whatever. But yeah, I didn't even mean to take it to this route at all. This is crazy. Because I'm asking for some trouble now. But I do want people to know who are listening, I only covered 2 examples of my, I think, 24 for this part 1 presentation. So the evidence is very limited so far in my whole simulation theory. And I hope we can talk again about it because I have so many more things just in part 1 presentation material. And then I have 6+ hours of part 2 and 3 material already available online if you want to find it. But there's a lot of evidence to back up what I'm saying here, and I did not make my case as thoroughly as I should have, and then I gay bashed, and now I'm gonna get pelted.
Well, I hope you. I'm not trying to. I'm more just asking as
No,
they
you did
pop in my
great.
head here. Do you want a family someday?
Yeah,
Kids?
man, I'm all about it. I've I did my hoe phase for a while and slept with more women than I'm proud to admit, and I was needing that for so long, and I always wanted to just settle down. It wasn't like I wanted to just bang a bunch of chicks. I wanted to after a while, for a while it was when I was trying to get over exes, but really I tried to find long-term things only. It's just I'm a man with urges, or more so in the past, and I wanted to find someone so quick that I would force situations with people who aren't really right for me. And also I didn't have Christ, and I was living a different life and being with women who weren't of the same mindset and thought I was crazy. And, obviously I am, but that's, in a fun way, I hope. But yeah, I do. And I want kids, and I want to be a dad, and I absolutely am fighting for that. But right now I'm focusing on my mission for God, which he chose me for, I believe. And after that, he will bless me if that's so the situation, but I'm not going to force it like I have been in the past because I know that he's structured my life in this way specifically to get me where I'm at, and I have full faith that he will deliver. And if I don't get a wife because I die or get beheaded by the government soon, that means I did a good job. So that's okay too.
You know, it'd be a fun ride if you were blessed with gay kids.
What's up?
All right, man. Well, I appreciate you hopping on here. I mean, I know you said you emailed me. I am always down to hear different sides of that coin here. I enjoy it. I enjoy talking to people with different perspectives, different experiences. I think it's important. So I appreciate you. I will link your book if you want to send me what you
Yeah.
whether it's a link, your website, whatever you need.
I have
me
a
to
free
link.
audiobook. My whole audiobook is free. It's got funny voices in it. It's on my YouTube channel. It's 34 hours, I'm sorry, but it's hilarious. And follow me on X, Sethlehem, Bethlehem with the Seth. Instagram, Sethlehem _. I get all schizo on X though, and my book's on Amazon, blah, blah, blah. The rigmarole. And all my podcasts. I have a lot of material. Please, guys, watch the material before you hate on me too much. In my podcast playlist on my YouTube channel. Thank you. I'm sorry about the gay stuff. Sorry.
All right, man. Thank you, Seth. Appreciate you, dude. Till next time.
Later, homie. Thank you.
Cheers.